National Weather Service in Raleigh with a winter weather briefing. So a winter weather advisory is in effect from 6 p.m. this evening through 10 a.m. Thursday for much of central North Carolina, with the exception of Scotland, Richmond, and Anson counties in the southwest part of the Raleigh coverage area. Okay, so what the heck is going on here? We just got rid of a winter storm. Now we've got the more wintry weather, you might be wondering. Well, the idea here is, we've got a rain event today. It's above freezing right now, but we do have a cold front across the area, and that cold air poised just to our north will move back in. Sub-freezing air, I might add, will move back in. We'll see temperatures falling into the upper 20s overnight, later overnight tonight. So yeah, the idea here is that cold air filters in from the north. There could be a changeover in P-type. There's some conflicting model data regarding whether it's going to be snow or freezing rain. But the bottom line here is, regardless of whether it's snow or freezing rain, there could be a few slick spots on elevated roads, bridges, elevated walkways, sidewalks, just enough of a hazard where a winter weather advisory seemed appropriate. This is not a big amount event. Whatever we get won't be a lot, but it could be enough to make for some possible isolated hazardous travel Thursday morning. Okay, especially where there is a little glaze, a little black ice, a little bit of, essentially, where there heavy snow fell to east of the triangle, there sure enough could be some black ice development. There was a ton of snow melt obviously yesterday. That snow melt to our east will continue today. So with temperatures ending up in the upper 20s late overnight tonight, there could be some renewed black ice development. Again, not widespread, but that it could happen. So anyway, keep in mind, even though the amounts that I'm going to show you are pretty light, I want to emphasize that the reason we've issued a winter weather advisory, like you see here outlined in this slide, is because we issue winter weather advisories for any amount of freezing rain. And yes, there could be a period of freezing rain. May not be a lot, but remember, any amount triggers a winter weather advisory, any amount. So very low threshold for winter weather advisory. Okay, so again, I don't want people to get too, overly excited about the fact that there's an advisory. So, I don't want that to imply, any sort of big numbers, but, this is going to be more of a sort of a nuisance type event with some areas maybe seeing, whether it's a light coating of snow, if the snow models end up, if that becomes a reality, a light glaze of freezing rain, or places further east where the snow melts and then we got temperatures coming into the falling into the upper 20s late tonight where there could be some renewed black ice. So any one of those three can trigger or result in some localized slick spots. So I just want to point that out. So all right, so before I show amounts, let's go ahead and take a look at some live data here. Eva, I hope you're able to get your sound restored. But yeah, it has started, and I've gotten some positive sound checks from folks, so it must be something on your end if you're able to hear me now. So anyway, yeah, so we've got this shield of rain, and if you look back over southern Georgia, central and eastern South Carolina, you might notice maybe some greater coverage of more moderate intensity rain, and that's the general theme of the models. Show the additional rains that you see sort of in this general region that will lift northeast over time. And it's possible that the western edge of that, see how that expanded there in the last few frames on the western edge, that could, get into maybe the triad areas this afternoon. So keep that in mind. Meanwhile, let me clear my drawing here. If you look to the north, you'll see there are sub-freezing temperatures clearly not too far to our north. Okay, so these colder temperatures are going to make their way south this evening. Okay, And I could probably even just show you where the actual cold front itself is. That's easy to point out, particularly here with these dew points. Look at the, the front is actually, there's essentially a front over the region now, and it's really evident by looking at these dew points here. 20s-ish dew point versus 40-ish dew point. But that's one boundary, and that's the focusing mechanism for this rain. But the actual real cold air part of that air mass change is still well upstream over, whoops, let me put temperatures back on, is still well upstream over the Ohio Valley and sneaking down into Southwest Virginia. So we got a little ways to go yet before those freezing or sub-freezing temperatures get to us. Okay, so that is current. Let's take a look at some models, as we like to do. Let me just switch into that kind of that mode, if you will. Bear with me here for just a second. And we will go with, I don't know, we'll just go with the high-res rapid refresh right now. And let's go to, bear with me here for just a second here. Temperatures, and let me remove that. And a couple things I'm focusing on, these lines. This first blue line represents where the temperature is 32 degrees, colder to the north, warmer to the south. This first orange line represents temperatures at 40. So basically, in between this blue line and this orange line, temperatures are somewhere between 32 and 40. Once you get north of this blue line, temperatures are at or below freezing. This really, this next shade of blue represents the 20-degree isotherm. Okay, so let's kind of zoom in, and then we'll go, we'll take it out in time. So this time frame right here is roughly about now. And then as I step forward to 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m., there is that expansion of that rain shield, yet we're still temperatures, well into the 30s or even lower 40s. That time frame right there is 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m. So through 6 p.m., and I would assume that is it safe to say that the afternoon rush is over by 7 p.m.? If that's the case, then we should be fine through the evening rush. Okay, so so for evening commuters. So one other thing I want to point out, okay, a couple things here. The heaviest rain is expected to fall basically across the eastern half of the state. Now, also across east of I-95, there's still quite a bit of snowpack. So we could envision a scenario where the typical drainage ways potentially could have some snow or ice pack built up in them. I could see a scenario where water has a hard time running off. This rain has a hard time running off into its normal drainage way if that normal drainage way is covered with ice or snow. So in our briefing, we've talked about poor drainage. And that's due to, and that'll be very localized. But I just wanted to, if you see water kind of backing up where places where there's snowpack, it's not necessarily because the rain is coming down so hard, but because it might not be. It's trying to find alternate ways to drain than its normal ways. It's due to that snowpack. So keep that in mind. East of or west of 95, that won't be a problem. And these rainfall amounts are generally under ½ inch. Okay, all right, so back to the snow, and let's go in freezing rain. And you can see there's little hints of it across southeast Virginia there. It's 7 p.m. By 8 p.m. It begins to expand a little bit along the Virginia border counties of North Carolina. This is 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 p.m., 1 a.m. No, midnight. Sorry, I skipped over midnight. Midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and then there's that 32-degree line. You see that? If you follow that blue line right there, that's where the temperature, north of that is below 32, and south of that is greater than 32. Gosh, I'm doing a terrible job drawing here. So hang in there with me for just 1 second while I get back to advancing these. So this is 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and that's about as far as this model goes out, okay? So, and I'll show you a different model to go further out in time. But the bottom line here is when you see that changeover, and it's about, what, it starts about right there, maybe as early as 8 or 9 across the Virginia border. And then it just slowly shifts south, and you see like a kind of a mixture of p-types. And it's just not, it's not really well concentrated. It's just hit or miss. You know, is it possible that if it were snow, it could put down a coating, a dusting? Yeah. If it were freezing rain, could it put a light glaze on, handles, or rail, what do you call it? The things that people hold on to while they're walking up a sidewalk. What are those called? Railings. Elevated roads could have a patch or two of ice. Elevated walkways, maybe the bridges, but again, that would be where the temperature is at or below freezing. Now, there's one other thing I want to discuss here, and that is you'll see a lot of our models are showing blues, which would suggest snow, but there's for meteorological reasons, which is beyond the scope of this call. And I don't want to get into the weeds of the meteorological science, but for meteorological reasons, it's possible that the simulation here might be misidentifying the precip type. So rather than blue and snow, this could be where you see the blue, it could be more in the way of freezing rain. Okay, so I just want to make people cognizant and aware of that it could be less snow and more freezing rain. Okay, so the impacts are still the same. Okay, so elevated roads, bridges, elevated walkways, railings, some sidewalks, could see a few slick spots, but again, I just don't not really seeing the amounts that would make for hazards much more than being isolated slick spots. Okay, so let me go to a different model just for comparison's sake. Obviously, we don't hang our hat on just one model. We like to look at the range of possibilities. Okay, so this is another model, and this is the current time right here. So we'll just call this noon. 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m. So again, same story, expanding light rain shield, maybe some embedded moderate rain across much of central North Carolina. That's 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m. Okay, so the difference between this model and the first model I showed you is that by 6 p.m. it has maybe more in the way of wintry type precips here up along the counties of North Carolina that border Virginia. Okay, I think for the larger metro areas, though, I think our evening or afternoon, whatever you want to call it, rush hours, commutes home, again, should still be okay. All right. I don't really have any concerns about people getting home from work in the traditional rush hour times in the Triangle region, even the Triad, Fayetteville region. I think everybody's going to be okay in that regard. But as we head into the evening hours, this is 7 p.m. This particular model is a little bit more aggressive than that first model I showed you, with suggesting maybe some mixing in of sleet, snow, maybe some freezing rain. You see, it's almost like the models are kind of struggling with p-type here. And again, there's for really good meteorological reasons, the places you see blue on this map could in fact be freezing rain. Okay, and again, the same story. This blue line is the freezing temperature, where temperature is at or below 32. South of it, it's above freezing. North of it, it's below freezing. Okay, so that time frame right there is 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11, midnight tonight. So all the way through midnight, places south of, say, the Highway 64 corridor or south of this blue line, you should be above freezing. or stay above freezing, and you should be okay. But if you're basically from Wilson to Raleigh to Lexington, maybe to Albemarle, Asheboro, sorry, points northward, it could be some sort of wintry precip, okay? But the fortunate thing is that the amounts are pretty light. You can see how patchy and splotchy the coverage is, okay? And then that is 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And notice how quickly southward this freezing line makes its push, okay? So, and again, this is a mixture of snow and freezing rain. It might tend more toward freezing rain again. This is 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. And again, you know, the freezing temperature is all the way almost down to the South Carolina state line. Now you can see it takes the longest to get to Scotland, Richmond, and Anson counties, and that's why we left you out of the advisory. Okay, but it's possible that before the night is over, the freezing temperature line could get through the rest of Central North Carolina. So that's why we have the rest of Central North Carolina in the advisory. Okay. All right. So that's what time is that? That's 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., 10 a.m. tomorrow, and it's pretty much over. Okay. So if I back this up and I'm just looking and I'm thinking, where does it go first to something wintry, and where does it stay the longest? And the thing is that if you draw a line along and north of 85 over to the northern I-95 corridor, okay, the usual places, the places that we talk about all the time, having the best chance to see wintry precipitation, those are the places that it is. See how it kind of is there the longest? So if you're in that zone north of that line, maybe, you know, again, Lexington to just south of, maybe to Asheboro, maybe as far south as Raleigh, over toward Rocky Mountain, points north, you've got the best chance to see whatever it is that's going to happen wintry begin to accumulate a little bit. Okay. South of that line, it's just very, very nuisancey. But there could be even just a touch of freezing rain even south of that line. And again, even just a touch of freezing rain triggers a winter weather advisory. Okay, so that's how we expect this to play out. All right, let's look at, if it's weather you love, it's weather.gov. Go to Central North Carolina here. If we scroll down to our winter weather page, the little snowflake here, and then if you scroll down and see where it says probabilistic snowfall, if you click on that, that gives you the range of possible solutions, okay? So this is the official forecast. And again, from Lexington to Asheboro to maybe the Northern Triangle over to Rocky Mount, from there north is the best places with the best chance to see any kind of accumulation, maybe as much as a ½ inch, okay? In the worst of the worst case scenario, now again, 90% of the models show less than this. So only 1 out of 10 models show amounts this much, okay? But we don't want to just hit the delete button on those models. We want to show you what those you know, outlying models show, just in case. There's been times where outlier models do end up verifying. So we're kind of wanting to show you what the outliers are, just in case, you know, in case this event ends up being an outlier event. Okay, we don't think it's going to be an outlier event, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. That they're, you know, the outliers are showing 1 to 2 inches of snow north of that line that I drew earlier. Okay, again, I don't really think that's going to be the case. I don't think the precip intensity and distribution is going to be great enough. All right, here's another way of looking at it. What is my chance, if you scroll down on that web page, what is my chance of seeing a 10th? What do we mean by a 10th? We mean just any amount of snow. I just, you know, a 1/10 of an inch, consider that just snow in the air, okay? And along and north of 85 and northern I-95 corridor, you're pretty much going to see it, okay? But when it comes to 1 inch of snow, even there, you only have Roxborough 38%, so there's less than a 50% chance of seeing an inch of snow. Roanoke Rapids, 39% chance of seeing an inch of snow. If you're down in Fayetteville, 0, okay? Fayetteville, you're not going to see an inch of snow, okay? 0% chance. But if you're in Burlington, 25% chance of seeing, 1 out of 4 chance of seeing an inch of snow. Okay, so those are pretty good odds that you won't see it, okay? But clearly you can use this as a guide to say that if it does happen, it would be these locations in central North Carolina that would have the best chance to see it, okay? So anyway, that's how you use these maps. Okay, what about 2 inches of snow? And again, I mean, those odds really fall off, and we're talking the 1 to 1.5 out of 10 chance of it happening in Roxborough, Henderson, and Roanoke Rapids. So if the outlier happened, that's where it would be. Okay, switching over to freezing rain. If you scroll back up and click on probabilistic ice, okay, there's a pretty good chance of where the models were suggesting snow that it could actually fall as freezing rain. Again, I don't want to get deep into the meteorological weeds and science, but just know that it could end up being more in the way of freezing rain. So what's the official forecast? For most of central North Carolina, we're talking just a touch of freezing rain, a glaze, if you will. I don't even know if I'd call it a glaze. But remember, our winter weather advisory is for any amount, okay? So these amounts are high enough to trigger a winter weather advisory by the National Weather Service. That worst case scenario, we're talking a 1/10, maybe 1/1500ths. And again, this would impact elevated surfaces, elevated walkways, elevated roadways like bridges, railings, maybe a few slick spots, but again, pretty light amounts, okay? All right, so let's look at those probabilities. So what is the probability that you're going to see just a touch of freezing rain? We'll call it a glaze. You wouldn't even be able to measure this, okay? We're talking basically, 4 to 5 out of 10 odds. So 40 to 60% chance, okay? Which, by the way, those chances are actually better than seeing, that 1 inch of snow or even a 1/10 of an inch of snow. So that tells you a lot right there, okay? And then what's the odds of seeing greater than 1/4 of an inch? Well, no. Before we go to quarter, well, while we're here, I already let the cat out of the bag here. So we'll show you pretty much nowhere has a chance to see 1/4 inch of ice, okay? 0% chance. What about a 1/10? The odds for a 1/10 of an inch are highest around Rocky Mount, Wilson, and Goldsboro and points east, maybe as far west as Zebulon, okay? Maybe down toward Clayton. But even that, the odds are pretty slim of seeing a 1/10 of an inch of ice. Okay, so again, please refer back to these if you want to zoom in on your specific location. And again, how did I get to this? If it's weather you love, it's weather.gov. Then click on Central North Carolina and then scroll down to the little snowflake icon and then click on these probabilistic tabs. Probabilistic snow, probabilistic ice. Okay, and if you have interest in more of a statewide look, you can click on NC probabilistic snow for the state version of the map, or NC probabilistic ice for the state version of the ice. Okay, and then finally, I know I talked a lot about this page during last week's events, weather.gov/forecast points. Okay, so if you're interested in like really drilling down to your street level, you can, let's just go to Winston-Salem here as an example. And then you can scroll down. Here's a week at a glance. Here's hour by hour out to the next 7 days, hour by hour. I prefer more of a graphical view. So I like these little graph plots, but I'm not a big fan of how compressed this is. So I'm going to expand it so it looks a little easier, so it's easier to read. So I'm going to go up here to configure plot look, and I'm going to change the graphic height to, let's do 425, and I'm going to save that. And then look how that expands that chart. Wow, that's a lot easier to read. So you can see in this particular location, I clicked Winston-Salem. Temperature we have falling below freezing at 11 p.m. and staying below freezing until 11 a.m. tomorrow. Okay. Oh, look at that. Look at that upward trend, by the way. I always like to end my briefings on a good note, and that upward trend is welcome. Okay. So look at that. Look at those high temperatures climbing each day as we head through next week. These are next week's temperatures. So hang in there and we'll get some normal temperatures here before long next week. All right, and then we could scroll down. Is there any wind with this event tonight? Not really. Pretty like below 10 miles per hour. How much total rain? We can click this button and you can see, you know, less than 1/10 of an inch in Winston-Salem. How much total snow? Maybe 2/10. And how much total freezing rain? Maybe 1/10 or 2. Okay, so just feel free to click on your spot of interest for how to use that.